Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study of the book of Revelation by the Apostle John. We're going to take a look at our first lesson in chapter 21. It'll be 21, 1 through 8, and it's going to be the new heaven and the new earth. We'll take a look at no more sea, all things new, and the overcomers who will inherit. Let's begin with block 1. Take a look at verses 1 through 3, and we read in verse 1, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. There was no more sea. Why is the sea singled out as no longer existing? And we have 5 possibilities. It did symbolize cosmic evil, or the unbelieving nations, or the idolatrous trade, or the place of the dead, or the totality of old creation. And it probably does encompass all 5 of the meanings. The sea is that which separates nations, and this separation has been overcome. And if we look back at Isaiah 65, the sea represents any threat of tribulation for God's people. And then we read in Isaiah 65:18, be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her a people of joy. The sea metaphorically represents the entire range of afflictions that formerly threatened God's people. That's what Beale says in his commentary. I agree with that. If you look at Isaiah 51:10 and 11, we see the crossing of the Red Sea equated with the removal of sorrows. Remember, Revelation has a new Exodus theme. You dry the sea of a way to pass over, therefore the redeemed come with singing unto Zion. Sorrow and mourning shall flee away. And then verse 2 we read, and I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from heaven, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And the Greek verb is katabino, to come down. It's used as a present participle. And new creation is called here New Jerusalem. That comes from Isaiah 52. O Jerusalem, the holy city, the unclean shall not come into thee. And then Isaiah 61. He hath clothed me with the garments of salvation, and covered me with the robe of righteousness, as a bride adorns herself. And then we do stack this verse with Revelation 3:12, where Jewish and Gentile Christians are called the New Jerusalem. He that overcomes, I will write upon him the name of the city of God, the New Jerusalem. Remember, the book of Revelation is a series of stacked visions. It is not a single linear chronology. It's a series of stacked visions. Now verse 3, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and he shall be their God. Skenao is to tabernacle with someone. We stack this with 16:17 and 19:5. God is the source of the declaration of the consummation of judgment. In 16:17, we have a great voice saying, it is done. Now the focus is consummate blessing, the redemptive side of Christ's second coming. Remember, Christ will come in judgment and redemption. Now we look at consummate blessing. In Revelation 7:15 through 17, we had the 144,000 and the great multitude. They were blessed with no more hunger, thirst, or suffering. The tabernacling presence is taken from Ezekiel 37. My tabernacle shall be with them. I will be their God, and they my people. It definitely comes from Ezekiel 37. But what we look at is the sea of sorrows is taken away, and we have the unveiling of the redemptive side of Christ's second coming. We have looked at the judgment side of Christ's second coming. Now we're looking at the redemptive side of Christ's second coming. It begins with the sea of sorrows being taken away. But it also includes new creation. So let's go down to block 2. Take a look at verses 4 through 6. In 4 we read, "And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death, no sorrow, no crying, no more pain. The former things are passed away." Aperkamai is the verb to pass away. It's used in the aorist indicative active or the prophetic present. Cross-reference Isaiah. What is that, 25? Isaiah 25:8. "He will swallow up death in victory, will wipe away tears, will wipe away the rebuke of his people, for the Lord has spoken it." And then cross-reference out of the Apocrypha to Baruch 21. "From now everything is in the state of dying. Let the realm of death be sealed." And then Isaiah 35:10. "And the ransomed of the Lord shall return to Zion, with songs and joy upon their heads, sorrow shall flee away." We stack this verse with Revelation 7:17. "The Lamb shall lead them to living waters, and God shall wipe away all tears." It definitely stacks with 7:17. Now in verse 5 we read, "And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, Write, for these words are true and faithful." Cross-reference Isaiah 43, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall you not know it? I will make a way in the wilderness." And then cross-reference 2 Corinthians 5:17. Here's one from the New Testament. A very well-known one. "If any man is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. All things become new." For Paul, new creation begins with Christ's death and resurrection. Now John proclaims the culmination of that new creation. Paul proclaimed the beginning of new creation. John now proclaims the culmination of new creation. John writes in prophetic present tense, that aorist indicative active, to emphasize the certainty of new creation. And we do cross-reference Isaiah. "By the God of truth, former troubles are forgotten. God creates a new heaven and a new earth." And then finally we take a look at verse 6 here. "And he said unto me, It is done. I am Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. I will give the fountain of life freely." Gaganan is from ginomai, and it's used in the perfect indicative active, and it should read, "They are done." Plural. These new things are done. They are done. Stack it with Revelation 16:17, "A great voice out of heaven saying, It is done." That was from the seventh bowl and the fulfillment of judgment. Now we have the fulfillment of new creation, all of which refers back to Christ's words on the cross, "It is finished." Stack Revelation 22:13 here also. It reads, "I am Alpha and Omega, beginning and end, first and last." God is the beginning and end of history. God reigns as sovereign through every event in between. That's a very powerful statement and a very reliable truth of the faithfulness of God in Christ. God is the beginning and end of history, and he reigns as sovereign for every event in between. That's a tremendous blessing right there. All right, we've had to look at the blessing of no more sea of sorrows in block 1, and then the creation of all things new, the culmination of new creation in block 2, and now we're going to look at the individuals who are identified as inheriting this eternal blessing. And they're called the overcomers. Not a surprise. Remember all the cover letters? I mean, we heard it in seven different cover letters that the blessings will come to the overcomers. And so, not a surprise, but let's go to block 3 and take a look at 7 and 8. Now in verse 7 we read, "He that overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son." That comes from 2 Samuel, the Davidic covenant. "I will be his father, and he my son. If he commits iniquity, I will chasten him, but my mercy shall not depart away from him." And then cross-reference Isaiah, "Come unto me, and your soul shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, as sure as that which was made to David." Now we know who the recipients of new creation are. They are the overcomers, and that is Nikon, the overcomer. In Greek it is Nikon. Nikon, the overcomer. These are those who refuse to compromise their faith by participating in the imperial cult. Stack the verse. Remember, we used to have stacked divisions with 2:26 to 29. "He that overcomes, I will give power over the nations. I will give him the morning star." Also stacked with 22:3 and 4. "There shall be no more curse. The Lamb shall be on the throne of God, and his servants shall serve him." The central promise of verse 7 is that of God's presence with his people. That is the blessed eternal promise of God's presence with his people. That's it. God's presence with his people. That's the tremendous eternal promise that we have. Now verse 8, "But the fearful and unbelieving, abominable and murderous, idolaters and liars, fornicators and sorcerers shall have their portion in the lake of fire, which is the second death." There you go. He gives us that sign. Doesn't have to be figured out. Okay, John gives us the translation of that sign. The lake of fire equals second death, period. That is, you don't have to figure that one out. That sign is given to us. Meros auton is their portion. The second death equals eternal separation from God's presence. Dailos, fearful, is contrasted with Nikon, overcomer. John exhorts believers to battle the beast, to be overcomers. The Greek concept dailos, fearful, signifies an empty faith. And since we're looking at John here in Revelation, let's look at John 14:27 to 29. "Let not your heart be fearful, because I come again unto you. I tell you this beforehand, that you might believe and have hope," we might add. We learn in the beginning of chapter 21 that in chapter 21 we're going to be looking at new heaven and new earth, and an articulation of new heaven and new earth specifically as an exhortation to encourage Christians to not have an empty faith, but to stand firm in Jesus Christ, to not compromise their faith, to stand strong, because they have the promise that they shall reign eternally in God's presence with his people forever. In verse 7, they have that promise. They need to not be fearful, but to be overcomers. The sea of sorrows that they experience now under oppression by Rome, persecution by Domitian and Pliny, persecution by the synagogues that are actually reporting on them and turning them in, all of this persecution shall be removed. Even any rebuke from God shall be removed. All things shall become new. It shall be a new creation, and it has been prophesied in the Old Testament. It's also been prophesied about in the Apocrypha. It is a promise they can rely on, that all things shall become new. And so we get tremendous encouragement, but it's all for a specific group that is now identified. John's bringing the book of Revelation to full circle. He began with 7 cover letters to 7 churches, over which he was the regional bishop, because he was the bishop over the Ephesus church. So basically, all 7 churches are his. And in every cover letter he said, be the overcomer. The blessings will go to the overcomers. Those who do not compromise the faith. Do not compromise the faith. Do not participate in idolatry. Do not participate in the imperial cult. Do not participate in false doctrine, which was coming from the Nicolaitans. He brings it all full circle now to say that the new creation, the new heaven and the new earth, is going to be specifically for those who do overcome. That's who it's going to be for. So this is a definite, concrete focusing of the promises of the book of Revelation. Remember, Jesus Christ in his second coming will come in judgment. We've finished that very tough section in chapter 20. And redemption. And now we're looking at chapter 21 and the redemptive side of Christ's second coming. The new creation of a new heaven and a new earth. The old has passed away. Behold, all things are new. I create a new thing. So it's a blessing to be looking at chapter 21 now and to see the redemptive side of Christ's second coming. A second coming that we can rely on because the same writer that wrote the book of Revelation wrote the Gospel of John, and this lesson closes with John 14, 27 to 29, where Christ is talking about, I go to prepare a place for you. I go to the Father, and the Father shall hold you because he holds me, and I hold you. And I will come again unto you. That's the promise we have in Christ's own words. I come again unto you. That's the promise for the disciples of the first century. That's the promise for us today. Jesus Christ will come again unto us. He gives us this promise beforehand that we might believe and that we might be faithful overcomers. That we believe and we overcome. We don't compromise. There are many idolatries in today's world for us. It can be a huge list of things. Anything that you put in the center of your life other than Christ. But be faithful overcomers. Believe because we have the promise beforehand. I come again unto you. Gospel of John. I love the Gospel of John, and I've learned now to love the book of Revelation. It's going to wrap up this lesson. It's chapter 21, 1 through 8. We're going to pick up next time in chapter 21, verse 9.